of Candid Frank Live, where you'll find us airing our views here on the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now, joining me as usual, Aaron William Freeland. See, I couldn't do it without a guy with three names. You know, Candid, Frank, Live, Aaron William Freeland. It doesn't work. I can't have a person with two names.
Well, you know, it's also the way I knew my mom was angry. I got to hear all three of
them. Aaron William Freeland?
That's it.
Sound familiar? That's too much. All right, let's jump right into it. And, well, you're looking forward to the weekend? A little personal talk? Any big things happening on the weekend?
Well, let's see. Got tonight off, thank goodness. And then tomorrow we're going to be doing a little shopping in downtown Hamilton before we go to the Rock game. So,
well, there you go. The Rock is on tap.
Exactly. Can't wait.
Enjoy the game. It'll be a lot of fun. We had on Thursday we had former Rock Josh Sanderson.
I remember. I saw that show. That was pretty good.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a lot of fun. All right. Well, listen. Speaking of a lot of fun, and speaking of well, look, you score your first goal in the National Hockey League. You know, you get that puck at the bench. Somebody gets it for you. Everybody pats you on the back. You get the tap hands of everybody on the bench, and then the refs say no goal. At least Bob McCann knows what that feels like.
Yeah, his father actually got to make sure that he made the game in time. We got there about 30 seconds before puck drop, if memory serves, and got to see his son pop one. But unfortunately, that pesky thing called the NHL rule book interfered. On the play that was in front of the net, Bobby actually went to kick the puck with his back skate to move it up to his stick, which is not entirely an uncommon move. But when he did it, it actually went off one of the Detroit players and into the goal. Unfortunately, at that point, because of Rule 37.4, Rule 49.2, and Rule 78.5, it was ruled ineligible because there was a clear kicking motion when he went to move it up to his skate. And unfortunately, after a kick, regardless of whether or not it's towards the goal or not, if it goes off another player or a goalie or a referee and then in, the goal does not count because of said distinct kicking motion. So
it's like tagging up offside.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the things.
He had to touch he had to touch the puck, or a teammate had to touch the puck for it to count. Unfortunately, the last. Well, anyway, too bad for him. And the Leafs look.
Stick, though, would have been.
Well, that should have been what should have happened. No, it's okay. He should have done that. You know, here we go again. It's like, you know, these Leafs don't know what they're doing. I mean, I don't know how they don't find themselves on the bottom of the standing.
It's, you know, it's a thing becoming all too common these days. Unfortunately, it just doesn't seem like there's the wherewithal to actually get it done when they need to get it done. So, you know, here we are.
Yeah. Well, look, and for people who are just watching for the first time, because I want to make sure that people understand this, we're being sarcastic. We're playing the part of the dissatisfied, overly critical Leaf fans, panic-driven, overly critical Leaf fans. Yeah, this was a game that they did not look ready to play for. It was a game that the Red Wings were looking for some revenge. They hadn't beaten the Leafs in 5 years. So
yeah, it's quite a long while since the Maple Leafs have actually been 18-2-2 against Detroit since 2016-2017. You know,
they were due. They were due. They were due. Well, here it says you said 4 years here. Was it 4 years? I thought I heard the TV guys say 5.
I think it was the last time. Yeah.
Okay,
The
cool.
last win
I
against Toronto
stand
was a
or I
3
sit
overtime win in February.
I sit corrected. What else did we see there? Let's see. We saw we saw a penalty to Nylander. Nylander just looked, oh man, but he gave him a good wallop. Um, yeah, and
Yeah.
then there were again, again. I mean, some of the penalties that are being ignored, I don't understand. You know, it's amazing, but apparently you're not allowed to hold a player's stick. We didn't see that all playoffs against Tampa, but we saw it against Detroit. You're not supposed
It's
to grab
funny
a
when those
guy's
calls
stick.
get made.
You know, I knew it was a penalty. I knew. Finally confirmed. I feel so vindicated that you're not allowed to hold a player's stick with your hand. Okay, let's go to the first intermission and let's talk about inclusion is beautiful in Canada.
So this is a story that we actually looked at started about 6 weeks ago. The Browns were looking to change the name because they felt that there was a certain ethnic and racialized attachment toward brownies. So they've announced a new moniker for 7 and 8-year-old girls uh, with the intention of making it more inclusive. And it's Embers for 7-year-olds and Comets for, actually, sorry, it came down to Embers and Comets. And Embers actually won. So behind that is Embers small, but they're potential. And when they work together, they can ignite a powerful flame.
Or they could make ashes of themselves.
Well, there's that too, but you know, most organizations like that have a fairly easy time of that.
Boy, I mean that anyway. I'm just gonna continue down the road. Let's talk about a malicious code embedded in the LCBO site. Goodness gracious, you can't buy a bottle of liquor and not get in trouble.
Well, this was on their actual website. There was an unauthorized party who embedded malicious code onto the website. And if this is for all of our viewers out there, if you've ordered something from the LCBO directly off their website or through the mobile app between January 5th and January 10th, your information may be compromised. This includes your name, your email, mailing addresses, and credit card information, particularly if you've placed an order. If you've done that, then please, by all means, check with your financial institution, have them track and look for any unusual purchases. In other words, things that are outside of what you would normally buy. Now, if you did actually order directly off your phone, that's not affected. And if you ordered through vintageshoponline.com, that was not affected. It was only ordering through lcbo.com, their main site.
Well, hopefully they solve that problem and get it fixed up. In St. Catharines, a worker suffered serious burns. Aaron, what happened there?
Well, this was at a chemical waste disposal site, a company called Sonic with 2 S's and X, but it's not where you think. And unfortunately, fire at the facility, the facility, and actually the 20 Kiefer Road. This was on Thursday evening about 6:30. There was an industrial building that was next to it. There was a partial collapse. Paint products, aerosol cans, hand sanitizers, and other oxidizers were inside this chemical disposal plant, but obviously everything that was in there was concerned. They managed to get people out. There were multiple explosions that happened. About dozens residents or so were evacuated from the neighborhood north of the fire scene because that's the way the wind was blowing. They were accommodated at the Conesequettic Center on Carlton Street. If you can, if you can donate materials, if you can donate clothing for any individuals who may have lost anything in that, that's great. There is a hazmat remediation team on there as well. They were concerned about the potential of contaminated water making its way to Lake Ontario.
Big concern.
Yeah.
Ottawa, the Rideau Canal, they're concerned with, of course, this warming trend that This global warming trend could affect the canal skating rink. They wait for the canal to freeze over, and then they have a nice long skating rink. But there are issues with the temperatures.
Yeah, fortunately, the skating season is now currently around 45 to 47 days, which is a little bit shorter than it was in the 50s and 60s and early 70s. And they're actually experimenting with different ways of cooling the surface of the water faster. One of the methods that they've actually been discussing using is a snowmaking machine to blow snow onto the surface to help cool it. As well, there's also thermal siphons that they're thinking of using to help keep the canal frozen. That's a closed loop system, typically used in permafrost regions to keep the ground frozen by removing heat from underneath the surface. These are things that they can put underneath the surface of the canal themselves, deep enough that it won't interfere with any boat traffic that may be up there, and help cool it down as well, so they can sort of extend the season a little bit.
And what about environmental impact? Says Frank.
That's that is a concern, but because the thermosiphons are actually a closed system, they're self-contained. So that's something that's a bit of a bonus in this particular situation.
North of Montreal, a fuel distributor problem. Share it with us, Aaron.
In Rock de l'Achigan, Quebec, there was a fire that broke out at a fuel distributor. It was at the Propane La Fortune outlet, which is a family-run business that distributes propane and heating oil. The fire chief for the Montcalm Regional County Municipality, François Tivers, said the call came in at about 11:17 in the morning, and given the severity of the incident, nearby fire services responded as well. There were about 50 firefighters on scene. Now, they weren't initially able to treat it at first, just because there was fear of an explosion. But a little after doing some surveillance with a drone, they actually moved in with foam rather than water, just to reduce the possibility of spreading accelerants around with the water itself. Sûreté de Québec helped evacuate the area. Now, the Mascouche outlet, as well as two others, were deemed safe, but Propane La Fortune is obviously concerned about possible fallout from this.
Let's talk about the Alberta Premier. He backs off a promise to seek pardons for COVID-19 health violators.
So Danielle Smith is backpedaling again, after having said in the past couple weeks that she'd actually spoken with Alberta bench lawyers about seeking pardons for individuals who violated it. Specifically, they were looking to pardon churches, as well as individuals who had received fines for deliberately violating the dates that had been put out. The actual Bar Society in Alberta later confirmed hadn't actually spoken to any of them, despite the fact that she said she'd reached prosecutors to see about brokering a deal for pardons. This is one of those things where she's getting caught in law, continuing to double down on it. So we'll see where it leads from here, but it's one of those things where she's interfering where she can't.
Let's check out the police in Winnipeg. They are charging a second man with attempting to intimidate justice official. So
this is part of the carry-on from an investigation that started right at the COVID-19 pandemic. Was a judge that was under surveillance because of mask mandates. Goes back to Justice Center for Constitutional Reform, who had been fighting COVID-19 restrictions in court. They'd hired a private investigator to follow Chief Justice Glenn Joyal, who was hearing a case about health restrictions involving churches represented by the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. The judge ruled against the churches, saying public health orders did not violate the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So, yeah, these charges are deepening now, and we're seeing how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Yeah, over and over, it'll happen. Let's talk about a record number of people died from alcohol and drug use during the pandemic. That's not a surprise. We kind of knew that was happening.
No, this is obviously not a great surprise. Unfortunately, There are a lot of unhealthy coping mechanisms out there. One of them is alcohol. In 2019, before the pandemic, there were 3,200 deaths in that particular year with alcohol. 1 year later, that number had increased 3,790 people, and again increased in 2021 to 3,875 alcohol-induced deaths. That 18% increase that we're looking at from 2019 to 2020 was the largest year-over-year change in the past 20 years. Now, when we say alcohol-induced deaths, those are attributed to one of the causes of death listed on reports, which include alcoholic liver disease, accidental poisoning by and exposure to alcohol, and finding of excess levels of alcohol in the blood. So.
Well, we know that the pandemic was very stressful. Let's go over to entertainment and really sad news. We had 4 deaths: Tatiana Patiz, Jeff Beck, Lisa Marie Presley, and Robbie Bachman, whom I assume, if I remember correctly, is the brother of Randy.
Yes, he was the drummer, one of the co-founders of Beatles. So yeah, the most shocking was Lisa Marie Presley. Everybody saw 6 years ago at the Golden Globe Awards. But she passed away January 12th at the age of 54. Jeff, most clearly known for the Yardbirds, passed away January 10th at the age of 78. Tatiana Patiz was a supermodel who helped launch Tatiana Patiz's career, in the 1980s. She passed at the age of 56. The cause of death for that, metastatic breast cancer. And as for Mr. Bachman, sorry about that. No cause of death was given for him. He was 69 and youngest of the 4 Bachman brothers.
And with Lisa Marie, her heart stopped. They tried to get it back going again, but she died in hospital.
It was very sudden. It wasn't expected at all.
There was some concern also because, she had been suffering from depression. Some people thought maybe it might have been, anyway, she was suffering from depression. Her 2020, her 27-year-old son committed suicide. Again, always a concern. Anytime you see people not feeling well, help them out. If you're not feeling well, make a phone call. Don't allow yourself to be alone through it, please. Let's go to the second period, and we'll talk about the Atlantic Division leading Bruins, who, I'm telling you, the Seattle team's been cracking it big time. They went through that. They went through the Atlantic Division and did some business.
Oh, I got to tell you, I enjoyed that game a great deal.
I bet you did.
Those of you who don't know, Seattle recently Boston their first regulation loss at home season by defeating the Boston Bruins 3-0. On of that, Boston at 32-5-4 in the Atlantic are going to be hosting the Toronto Maple Leafs at 26-10-7, who are second in the Atlantic and third in the NHL behind the Carolina Hurricanes. They're basically, the Leafs are going up against the top team in the Atlantic and the top team in the NHL. Now, Boston 6-3-2 in Atlantic Division games. They serve about 10 penalty minutes a game. They're ranked 9th in the league for that. Toronto has a similar record to Boston at 6-2-1 against the Atlantic Division. They are 11-3-4 when their opponents get more penalties than them. So if Boston continues with their trend of getting 9.9 penalty minutes per game, and the Leafs manage to keep themselves out of the box by not taking lazy penalties and stick penalties, then they should be okay.
I don't know just whether this is worth mentioning or not. I think they played earlier this season. Who won?
Yeah.
You want help? You need help? You need help? The Leafs beat them earlier this season. It was they were like, I think it's only 2 teams had beaten them at that point.
Yeah,
and
that was one of the things that actually give some people a lot more confidence from Maple Leafs just based on the fact that they had actually hung loss on the Bruins, and hardly anybody else managed to realistically at this with a record of 2-5-4. Well, the Bruins are basically undefeated. I mean, this is
There's
absolute wagon.
The team I remember is from the 70s with Dryden, the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, they went through a season. I think they lost 5 games all year, 5 or 6, but that was in the tie era where you were able to tie a game. But anyway, regardless, both teams, the Leafs and the Bruins, are going to be in a mood. They both got spanked. The Leafs on the road, the Bruins at home. So it's going to be an interesting meeting between them two. We'll talk about that further down the road. Let's go to the second intermission. We'll talk about other sports, and we'll start with the NBA. Apparently, Scotty Barnes is finally shining.
Yeah, it's taken, that the Raptors got to an extraordinarily slow start this year. It hasn't been good for them, but they've actually earned their first game win streak so far in 2023. They beat the Charlotte Hornets 24-114 on Thursday. Now, over the course of December, January, Coach Nurse repeated how it's taken longer to find his rhythm in the rim, opting for harder shots on the perimeter. Those didn't seem to be a problem, Barnes, against the Hornets. He set tough screens on and rolls. I think having a game like that does a lot for players' confidence. Barnes was actually really good at distributing the ball to three-pointers outside of the paint because he was taking 2 defenders with him to the basket, leaving somebody open. So that was very important and very good to see.
Let's talk about the Halifax Mooseheads, who are paying tribute and honoring longtime timekeeper. So
this is a gentleman who spent 42 years with the Heads. A gentleman by the name of Ron Beard, currently 87. He's going to be stepping away from this season. He's actually been at the clock for the Mooseheads for 5,285 games. It's
excellent.
One of those things. Originally born in and grew up to the East Coast when he joined the Navy in 1952. He's worked 1,185 home games for the Mooseheads. He's worked American Hockey League games, World Juniors, worked Women's Hockey Championship. It's pretty awesome to see. So it's a well-deserved retirement for him.
The Canadian Football League. Let's talk about them. The Bombers extend Jamarcus Hardwick.
So Marcus was sorry about that. An American tackle. They signed him to a 1-year extension. He was due to become a free agent. It's going to be his 7th season with the Bombers. He started 17 regular season games at right tackle for the Bombers last year and was part of an offense that finished 2nd in offensive points, 1st in touchdowns, 2nd in rushing yards, and yielded the 2nd fewest number of sacks. So because he's been with them and he was a CFL All-Star in 2021 and he was named to the CFL Players Association All-Star squad in 2022, they figured it was worth bringing him back.
The Elks signed defensive lineman Jake Serezna for 2 more years.
Yep. So this is an American defensive lineman. He got a 2-year contract extension. He's coming off a 2022 season, which saw him be a star for the first time. He led the Elks and ranked 3rd in the CFL for sacks with 10 and forced fumbles, despite only playing in 12 games. He also had 31 defensive tackles last season.
The Argos add American defensive back Keith Washington Jr.
So Washington Jr. played 8 games for the New Orleans Breakers of the USFL last year. He recorded 18 tackles and 1 interception. In 2020 and 2021, he was with the New Orleans Saints after being signed by the team as an undrafted free agent. Back in 2018 and 19, he played 2 seasons at WVU. where over the course of 22 games, he had 63 sacks. So they're looking to see he can continue that trend with them.
Let's go over to the third period and talk about hockey outside of Toronto and in Toronto, but we'll start with outside Toronto. I don't know if you heard, Aaron, but the Red Hot McCrackens beat the Bruins 3-0.
Yeah. Marty Jones called it Seattle season, and Yanni Gord wasn't going to argue with him. The good news is Jones ought to face 27 shots as they won 3-0. Now, this was 3 nights after shutting up the Habs in Montreal. He stopped Pasternak on a breakaway.
Yes, sir.
Then this is Seattle's 7th straight win. So this little bit of East Coast cooking has been really good for them.
Yeah, he pasteurized Pasternak or whatever. Anyway, the Canadians honor PK Subban, then ride Cole Caulfield to a win over the Preds.
Yeah, PK Subban was back in town, so they gave him an emotional tribute to the top puck drop, and then it was all downhill. Cole Caulfield got 2 goals. Jonathan Drouin had 3 assists, and Montembeault recorded 39 stops to hold on 4-3 win. Now, it's season that the Habs have had, it was difficult. I think it's hard for the fans to get motivated for some of these games. I know how they feel. I watched Leafs teams during the 80s and early 90s, so I've been there. But PK said, it was like I'd never left. He retired in September after 13 years, and he got a couple-minute long ovation from the Canadiens faithful. So glad to see him get the welcome like that. He was also at Mila, a young family who was receiving care at Children's Hospital, still sponsors. So,
yep, and he was not happy with his retirement. He really felt he should have been able to sign. He was hoping to sign with Toronto. Nope. Toronto didn't even talk to him. There were a few other teams that he was hoping would give him a shot. And now when he sees teams suffering without defensemen, he wonders, why didn't they he would have signed for bottom dollar. But the problem with PK Subban is the baggage that he brings with him. And unfortunately, rightly or wrongly, Aaron, his reputation took a hit at the end of his career.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that once that sort of stain gets on you, it's very hard to wash off.
But not when you don't have the time to wipe it off either, right? Isn't that just it? He didn't have the time to wipe it off. Okay, so the Senators extend the Coyotes' losing streak to 7.
Yeah, kudos to them for hanging that loss on. We started to watch the first part of the game, but it got a little too late for me last night. But yeah, they had a 5-3 victory on Thursday. Tkachuk and Derek Brassard scored in the first. That also the same period that Clayton Keller got tossed out for a cross-checking game misconduct. The Coyotes actually were behind by 2 goals 3 different times last night, and Barrett Hayton scored. Then they pulled Karel Vejmelka, but Artem Zub scored on the empty net to end the night. So Mark Haslick also had a goal, and Forsberg stopped 27 shots. It was great to see Tkachuk and Haslick get the reception that they actually did in Arizona pregame, so that was neat.
I can't disagree with that. Jordan Peterson's Ottawa event directly opposes NHL's diversity and inclusion efforts, experts say.
Yeah, so this is a little bit off topic, but Canadian Tire Center in Ottawa usually hosts a lot of events. They tout themselves as a venue where the greatest games, the biggest shows, and the best times in the nation's capital happen. Now, those of you who know, the Hockey Diversity Alliance is a big deal. And the arena and the team are owned by the estate of the late Eugene Melnyk and run by branches of Capital Sports. However, Jordan Peterson is going to be appearing at the Canadian Tire Center this month. Now, the group sorry, the appearance is going to be in a building that's operated by a group with a representation at the NHL's board of governors. Some of his comments, including calling gender affirmation care a viciously harmful fad and a Nazi medical experiment level wrong, is one thing that's kind of upset those individuals. His comments specifically targeting Elliot Page for being transgender have all been problematic. And for him to be at an arena like that, run by the company that runs it, to some folks appears problematic. I know that there are those proponents of speech. We would say, let him speak. But at the same time, I don't know. He's not a big fan of equity and diversity, basically.
He opposes Bill C-16.
Yeah. And Bill C-16 would be one that would enshrine protections for people's pronouns and for, and he's basically said, well, I call that forced speech because why would I have to actually call somebody by what they are if their appearance is something else?
Whatever. Kyle Connor breaks third period tie. Jets beat Sabres 4-2.
So, it was a third period breakaway. Nikolai Ehlers intercepted Rasmus Dahlin's pass and sent the puck to Connor, who beat goalie Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen at 7:19 of the third period to give the Jets their 6th victory in 7 games. Talk about teams that are heating up here. The Jets appear to be on a little bit of a hot streak, so that's good to see. Dylan Sandberg, Josh Morrison, and Carson Kuhlman also scored for Winnipeg. Hellebuck had 39 saves. So, Hellebuck is proving himself to be worth it. Saku Menelainen returned after missing 16 games because of an upper body injury, and forward David Gustafsson was placed on injured reserve to make room for him up on the roster.
Flames Dewar, first player from South Dakota to score in the NHL. North Dakota is a pretty popular place for hockey. South Dakota apparently not.
So, his first goal for Calgary on Thursday broke a tie in the second period. He was born in Sioux Falls and became the first South Dakota-born player to score in the NHL. Dylan Dubé also scored twice in the third period, and Dan Vladar made 25 saves to help the Flames to a 4-1 win over the St. Louis Blues. Now, Dubé broke a 1-1 tie, scoring with 9:10 left in regulation, and added an empty netter in the final minutes. Calgary has been up and down all season, and it's really frustrating to me because they got rid of some top-flight talent, and then they brought in some top-flight talent. And normally you try to judge a trade and see who won that trade by which team does better. And in this case, both teams are doing worse. So I'm not sure quite how to judge the trades that were made and the signings that were done in the offseason.
So much truth to that. There's so much truth to that. But, anyway, let's see what happened. Let's talk about Kostin, McDavid. They lead the Oilers 6-2 rout of the last place Ducks.
So Klim Kostin got 2. Connor McDavid and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins had a goal and an assist apiece. Leon Draisaitl scored, and Jack Campbell actually made 21 saves on 23 shots for the Oilers. So they managed to stop a 2-game skid on the second stop of a 4-game West Coast road trip. Edmonton recorded 53 shots on goal while scoring at least 6 goals for the 5th time over the past 5 weeks. And this is to make up for a 4-3 loss to the Ducks last month. And this team, I'm not sure exactly what is going on with the Edmonton Oilers. They should be doing way better than they are, but they're currently still mired in a wild card spot. So I'm not understanding exactly what Holland is doing with this team, but hopefully he's got some other vision in mind that's going to take them where they need to be.
The Edmonton Oilers, by definition, are a team that belies talent. And by that, I mean, they for years have drafted first overall. How many times they had? In fact, the National Hockey League invented a new rule because they just got sick and tired of Edmonton drafting first overall. And all this talent. And then they trade for, 2 guys on the former Leafs, right? I'm not counting Ceci in this mix. you know, they get former Leaf goaltender, former first line Leaf. They bring him in and add it to the mix of a team that was pretty good and that did pretty well in the playoffs, and nothing. I It's amazing that for them it's not the talent, it's the cohesion. It's that silly phrase where you go the this the stuff that isn't factual. It's just what kind they just are not able to build a team that plays really well during the season. Now that doesn't mean the playoffs are out of reach for them, because all they have to do is get there, but that seems to be the biggest question right now.
Well, they've definitely got an uphill road to climb. They're chasing Calgary currently for the last wild card spot. They're in the last wild card spot. So it's one of those situations where you have all this top flight talent. Why are you not doing better now?
It's curious. It really is curious.
Hopefully they'll come up with a solution.
Well, hey, the tangibles, they lead the league in tangibles. It's the intangibles they're having problems with. It's just crazy. I mean, if I was an Edmonton fan, I'd be going, I want to be a Leaf fan. Because I like to complain about my team, but I want my team to play well. I mean, think about it, Leaf fans. I mean, you could be an Edmonton fan with what's going on. Imagine if what was happening. You've got some would argue, and I might be one of them. Two of the best players in the world are playing on your team. Two of the best players in the world.
Yep.
But I saw that one of the goals they scored, Cody Ceci looked like he was wearing a Leaf jersey.
Oh,
did you see
that's
that?
Just mean.
Did you?
No, unfortunately, I didn't. I'll have to go back
you
and
didn't
check the
see
highlights.
it?
But
oh my God, it was like Ceci was standing still.
Oof.
The game I'm talking about is against the Avalanche, and the MVP just blew past him and his partner.
It just seems like they're standing still sometimes, and it's the most frustrating thing in the world, because it's like, you've got feet, you know how to use them, you're in the NHL.
Really, what it is, though, Aaron, in defense, in the semi-defense of those defensemen, when you have the best player in the world, Connor McDavid coming at you, you should have already been moving towards your end. You don't wait till he's on top of you, because if you wait till he's on top of you, he's by you. And the same thing's true with McKinnon that made Ceci look bad. We have this phrase. A lot of times we hear this phrase where he's sneaky fast, right? And defensemen have to be sneaky fast. They just have to be. There's no, it's not a question of whether they're fast or not. They cannot be caught out of position. And when your backup, the guy you're with, gets blown by a split second after you do, and then he's got a breakaway, and he scores. McKinnon scored, by the way, on the play. Those are the kinds of things that Edmonton fans are probably just. And the talk is that, the GM, he needs to do something about their defense. And he did. He brought in Darnell Nurse. We talked a little bit about this the other day. Darnell Nurse, in some people's minds, was a top defenseman, but he's not playing like a top defenseman.
That's the thing, right? I mean, you look at the lineup that they currently have, and you look at the defensemen. Tyson Barrie, Philip Broberg, who? Cody Ceci, yikes. Vincent Desharnais, okay, that's fine. Brett Kulak sounds like a wrestler. Darnell Nurse, there's a given. He's a known commodity. He should be able to help you. Marcus Niemelainen, who? Like, all of this does not help this case. You've got two ex-Leafs on there, and they're...
And you got one in goal.
Oh, my God. Yeah, actually, there's two ex-Leafs on there. There's Jack Campbell and Calvin Pickard.
Yeah.
And Calvin Pickard used to be with the Avalanche.
Too. That's four. Yeah. That's up to four now. 4 or 5? Yeah. Five. Yep. Because they've got a forward, two defensemen, and two goaltenders.
Yep. it's one of those things where you're looking at this team, and you know, you've got Draisaitl up front, you've got Hyman up front, you've got Kane, who's currently injured, you've got
Wow.
McDavid, Nugent Hopkins, Puljujarvi, Devin Shore. What
Kane
is
will make a
going on here,
difference.
guys?
Kane will make a difference because he'll make that second line, whatever line he's on, he'll make it a good line. I like him. You know, I've never been really sold on his personality. You know, I hold what he did in Vegas against them. You know, holding up bricks of money, and you know, I think that's you know, that's a little much. You know, it's forgivable. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to tar and feather the guy, but I just think it shows immaturity and very insensitive. You know, especially you know considering you know we're talking about tolerance here and we're talking about inclusion, and to wave money like that at people in a way that just to me doesn't smack of being very well lacks a little bit of class in my opinion. But then if you take it as a joke, then you know okay, oh well, right. But unfortunately, jokes today are being judged all the time.
Yeah.
So right now, the Edmonton Oilers are a punchline, and it's not funny. And if you're an Edmonton Oiler fan right now, you're just what does it take? You know, you ask yourself. This is an organization, a team, and fans that have seen some of the best potential in the summer join the team, and it just it flames out. It's ashes. It turns into embers. Maybe they should call them the Edmonton Embers. No,
Yeah, we'll
up in
see. I
smoke.
mean,
Up in
there is
smoke.
not all is not lost. There is some hope on Bakersfield. So you know,
Well, yeah. Well, I wish better for them. You know my feelings about the Canadian teams. And speaking of the Canadian teams, Stamkos scored 400 and his 499th goal and beat the Canucks. And one of our friends, David Morisuti, posted um, a punch that a Tampa Bay player put out there.
yeah.
And and is there going to be something done by the league? And and I just added headshot. I mean, by definition, a headshot.
Well, and this is an ongoing issue, in particular with this player, because this is also the second time that he's been fined in the past 2 weeks. We're talking, of course, about
Sergachev.
Kyle Sergachev, who got
He's a
$5,000 fine for hacking the hands of one of the Leafs players. I believe it was Bunting, and then for that shot to the head of Connor on the Vancouver Canucks, he also got fined $5,000. So I mean, for the money that he's making, $5,000, haha, whatever, I'll take it. But like, come on, man.
Isn't a fine supposed to be an introduction?
Well, you know
what I mean.
He's not
Right,
considered
repeat
a repeat
offenders
offender.
are supposed to be punished. He's the definition of a repeat offender. In a week, three in a week, and they don't think to suspend him in a week.
Let's be clear here, Frank. The first one was a stick infraction. This was a punch. Now, had it been 2 punches, then he would be a repeat offender. Or had it been 2 slashes, he would have been a repeat offender. But
come on,
you know,
that's not what a repeat offender. That's not the definition of a repeat offender. The definition of a repeat offender is someone who gets suspended and then gets suspended again and then gets suspended again. And when he doesn't get the message, the whole point, as far as I'm concerned, the repeat offender term is used for people who continue to be suspended, and maybe the suspensions need to be accelerated. In this case, the penalty needs to be accelerated. But, you know, it depends what team you're playing for. I firmly believe that. The National Hockey League does not mete out justice based on, it's not blind. Let me put it that way. It's tainted. It just, you know, there's no other way to look at it when you look at the calls. You know, do a comparison and you'll understand what I'm saying. It's not hard to understand. Like I said, we saw a whole playoff series where holding a stick was okay. And then we see it one time in the game and it's called one time in the game. It wasn't done again before or after. So it is a penalty. And that my friend, is what is wrong with the National Hockey League. They just are not consistent with their penalties, number one, and they're not consistent with awarding suspensions. There are so many examples of inconsistency. It's the only constant in the National Hockey League that they're going to be inconsistent when they call penalties, whether it be on the ice or in the head office.
And this is not as strictly isolated to. I know that as the center of the hockey universe, we tend to believe that everything bad is done against us. But as you can see, Connor Garland was the one that got punched in the head by Sergachev. Bunting was the one on the Maple Leafs that got slashed. There have been numerous other instances of the officiating being absolute hot garbage this past week as well.
Shot to the head.
You got to wonder if. Oh, yeah.
Camp took an elbow in the head.
The referee was right there. Nothing was called.
Well, there's 4 of them, and none of them saw it.
Convenient that.
I don't know what's more disturbing. Aaron, did the league do anything?
No, I haven't seen anything about that. No.
A fine?
For Niederreiter? No, I haven't seen anything.
Anything?
No.
Anything? Shot to the head with an elbow?
Nope. The only shots to the head that this league takes is vodka and tequila.
I don't know. I just, it shouldn't be. A shot to the head is a shot to the head. If a guy gets elbowed in the head and it's a clear, as that by definition, the only, it was the primary point of contact. I don't think Kemp's head or any part of the only part of him that got hit was his head. He took an elbow to the head. Nothing. And you know what? People can ride us for saying, and they could say all they want about holy fans. Well, you know what? I stand behind what I just said. A shot to the head. It was the primary point of contact. In fact, it was the only point of contact. I seem to recall, and you're gonna have to go back, folks, in time. You're gonna have to get into your time machine. And that shot was no different than the guy that got traded, Kadri, that he did along the boards to a Boston player. It's no different. He got the guy with an elbow, just the elbow. He didn't hit him, didn't touch him, just stuck his elbow out and knocked him. And the same thing happened. Player wasn't unconscious. He got a penalty, and he got suspended in the playoffs, multiple games. I'm sorry.
No,
that's not being a Leaf fan. That's not a Toronto fan. That's just simple fact.
I've said this online, and I'll repeat it again here for the benefits of everybody else. The NHL needs to introduce VAR. They need to introduce video assisted review to this sort of thing. I want to see them make sure that they get these calls right. Whether it goes against the Leafs or it goes against their opposition, I do not care. Headshots like that shorten careers. That's the long and the short of it. Kampf has already had a couple concussions. This is not a laughing matter, man. It's
no. I'm
business.
Sorry. It's just I'm laughing because of what I'm thinking I'm going to say after you said. But really, what the league has to do is they have to change the way they call penalties. They've got to stop doing this, and they got to start doing this.
You know what? Honestly, give the linesman the opportunity to call penalties.
They do. They can talk to the linesman. But you're right. It should be official. But anyway, okay, Aaron, that was fun. Thank you, sir.
No, I appreciate that, Frank. Thank you.
Okay, he's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live, Aaron, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Candid Frank Live, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer here on the SpanglishWorld.ca, place of worship of sports and news. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.